The epic saga of the interstellar comet known as 3I Atlas is nearing its end, but not before it goes out without a metaphorical bang. The comet just made its closest pass by Earth overnight, coming within 167 million miles of us. That close. That journey should give us some of the best images yet of the interstellar object. 3I Atlas will be visible for the next few months before it leaves our solar system forever. Our next guest has gone viral several times for his hypothesis that the comet could actually be an alien spacecraft with, quote, hostile intentions. The majority of the scientific community agrees it's just a comet. But has Avi Loeb been convinced? Harvard professor Avi Loeb joins us now. So, Avi, do you think it's a comet or do you think it's a spaceship?
Well, so far, so good. 3I Atlas did not maneuver or display any unusual activity when it came closest to Earth. Some Earthlings might find it insulting, but the truth of the matter is that with its initial speed, it must have taken it a billion years or many billions of years to cross the Milky Way galaxy. And so when it started its journey, there were no humans on Earth, and Jupiter must have been the center of attention in the solar system. We arrived late to the party, only over the past 10th of a percent of the Milky Way history. Given that, we should not be surprised that interstellar visitors did not plan to dance with us. Now, with respect to the nature of this object, there is still unsolved mysteries because we see a jet coming from the object in all the recent images, stretched out to about 1 million kilometers in the direction of the sun. And that was never seen for comets from the solar system.
What does that tell you?
Well, we don't know because we don't understand it. So
you're saying it's doing unusual stuff, but you think it's just a comet?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, given all the data we have, I would agree that it's most likely natural, but there are still a lot of things we don't understand about it, and it didn't look like comets that we are familiar with. So let's try and figure them out in the coming months. And then, of course, it will get closest to Jupiter on March 16th. By the way, it had a rendezvous with two spacecraft that were human-made, JUICE and the Europa Clipper, and that happened just over the past month, and it will arrive in March 2026 to Jupiter, whereas these spacecraft will arrive in 2030 and 2031, just to show you how much faster it is, which means that I would love to actually hitchhike and go on a ride with this very fast interstellar visitor, because it will exit the solar system well before Voyager, that we launched in the 70s.
So you have a few more months when we can get some good images of this thing. You now say it is a comet, but you also point out it's done a lot of very unusual things. Does that raise the question, where did it come from? Is it made of a different kind of substance? I mean, what are the still unresolved questions in your mind?
The main unresolved question is, why does it have this jet pointed at the sun? It also rotates with the rotation axis in the direction of the sun at large distances. That's also very unusual. And it came in the plane of the planets around the sun, again, an unusual fact. I would suggest monitoring it as it comes close to Jupiter. It arrives just at the distance where Jupiter's gravity dominates over the sun's gravity. If we don't see it doing anything unusual, then I would conclude that it must be natural, but let's keep an eye on it.
All right, you're still holding out hope, as well as your metaphorical finger out to hitchhike with the very fast 3I Atlas. Avi Loeb, always great to have you on the show. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thanks for having me.
The next guest, Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, has suggested the 3I Atlas is actually some type of alien technology sent here from another solar system. And he's come on the show before to lay out the scientific reasoning behind that startling hypothesis. Well, this weekend he made headlines again when he said that the object could actually be on a mission to release, quote, mini probes that could invade Earth. Avi Loeb joins us now. He's head of the Galileo Project, director of Harvard University's Institute for Theory and Computation, also the best-selling author of the book Extraterrestrial. Okay, I'll bite. What are these mini probes you're talking about, and how would this even be possible?
Well, there are two possibilities. If it's a technological object, then it might maneuver itself. We haven't seen such a maneuver so far. But the other possibility is that it may release some other objects that reach the planets, and it will continue along its course to the next star. And we just need to keep our eyes on the ball, the way that basketball coaches often say to their team members, because we don't know, but it may well be just a rock which has some ice on the surface that evaporates, in which case we will say it's natural. You know, I defined a new scale last month that is now called the Loeb scale, where 0 is a natural object and 10 is a technological object. And at this point, I give it around a 4. But if it looks like a comet as it comes closer to the sun, I'll reduce the rank closer to 0.
Well, 4 is not 10, so it's actually, you think there's more of a shot that it really is actually just a comet?
Yeah, the reason was that the inferred size of the object was huge. It was between 20 and 46 kilometers, unless there is a dense cloud of dust around it that is scattering sunlight. This is an object, if that is the size of it, that is 1,000,000 times more massive than the previous interstellar objects we've seen, and that's quite unlikely. There is not enough material in interstellar space to bring such a huge object.
The fact that it's unusually large is what's making you doubt that or at least be open to the possibility that it's not just a comet?
That's one aspect, and the second is that the trajectory is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun. Now, we will get a good image of it when it comes close to Mars on October 3rd. We don't need to wait a lot. And there is a camera called HiRISE on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter that can image it with a pixel resolution of 30 kilometers. So we should be able to tell how much light is reflected off the object, and from that infer its size. And I very much look forward to that. You know, the fun of doing science is that we are guided by evidence and not prejudice.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is asking NASA to monitor 3I Atlas and to send an orbital spacecraft even closer to it as it passes. That would give, what are the chances that NASA will agree to do that? Because that would certainly give us even more data, right? Even more images.
Yeah, this came because she actually spoke with me on the phone, and I mentioned
the paper. So you put her up to it.
Yeah, and I suggested doing that. NASA has a number of facilities that it can use in space to get us more data, and she did send a formal letter to Sean Duffy, the interim administrator of NASA. We are very much in line in terms of the way we think about this object and about the UAP that, in fact, Representative Luna is the chair of the task force that tomorrow will host a hearing.
So did NASA agree to do this? Have you heard any word? Because time is short, right? This thing is going to be here pretty soon.
Yeah, well, I spoke with the principal investigator of several of the missions, and definitely when the object comes close to Mars, the HiRISE camera will be used, and several other observatories will look at it. So I'm very much hopeful. I look forward to the data.
A supposed comet is catching the attention of some of the nation's most renowned scientists, as one Harvard professor is raising the theory this may actually be a piece of alien technology. According to renowned theoretical physicist Professor Avi Loeb, the comet is on an extremely unusual path, moving too fast to be bound by the sun's gravity, breaking a typically seen orbital trajectory. And while this comet poses no current threat, Professor Loeb believes more data should be collected to uncover the nature of this object and whether it has the potential to create risks in the future. Joining us now to discuss more is that scientist himself, Harvard professor of science and author of Extraterrestrial, the First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, Avi Loeb. Professor, it's always so good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's wonderful to see you, Natasha.
So, Professor Loeb, your recent paper suggests that this object might actually be alien technology rather than just another comet. What exactly about the speed, the trajectory, the behavior leads you to consider this as a possibility?
Well, first, it's relatively bright for its distance, implying that if it's a solid object, it has to be 20 kilometers in diameter. That's twice as big as the giant asteroid that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. And the previous objects we saw from interstellar space were only hundreds of meters in size. So there is just not enough rocky material in interstellar space to provide us with a 20-kilometer rock that appears once per decade. But more importantly, the trajectory is very unusual. It's aligned with the orbit of the Earth around the Sun. And the chance of that happening is 1 in 500. And then it also, the timing of its arrival is very fine-tuned because it comes very close to Jupiter, to Mars, and to Venus. And the chance of that happening is 1 in 20,000. And moreover, it's moving in the opposite direction to the motion of the Earth around the Sun. And when it will come closest to the Sun, the Earth would be on the opposite side. So we won't be able to observe it. That's the point in time when it can do a maneuver with the aid of the Sun's gravity. And that will happen on October 29th. And I already heard from a fan that he is trading options against the volatility of the markets, the stock market, with an expiration date because of the October 29th, because if it's alien tech, that would change the future in quite dramatic way. It will have a huge.
I mean, so many questions. So, I mean, if I have this correct, I believe you've proposed using a Richter scale before to assess such objects. A 0 means this is totally of natural origin. 10 means this is clearly engineered. Based on what we know about this object and what you're observing, what number would you give it now?
We don't have enough data. It depends how much weight you give to the unusual orbit. The trajectory is extremely rare and fine-tuned. And depending on that, how much you assign to that, you will give it a rank that is somewhere in the middle. It's difficult to assess at this time, but we will get, the good news is we'll get much more better data in the coming months. And the fun of doing science is that you can ask questions at first and then answer them with data. And we don't need to have an opinion, especially in a blind date like this one. All bets are off. This visitor came from interstellar space, and it's possible that it targeted the inner solar system for a technological reason.
From what you're describing, this sounds like one of the worst blind dates potentially I've ever heard of. Do we have the capabilities right now to track, intercept, and even respond to something non-human entering our solar system as soon as October?
Well, it will be moving relative to Earth at nearly 100 kilometers per second when it's closest to the Sun, simply because it moves in the opposite direction to the motion of the Earth. There is no way for us to send a rocket that will intercept with it from Earth. However, I wrote a paper last week that there is actually a spacecraft that is orbiting Jupiter. It's called Juno, and it's at the end of its life. The plan was to send it straight into Jupiter in September 2025 because the mission has ended. But what I realized is that if instead of giving it a push so that it ends its life inside Jupiter, you give it a push away from Jupiter, if the push is sufficient, then it will actually intercept the orbit of 3I Atlas, this new object, in March 2026, when it will come very close to Jupiter. And on Tuesday this week, just a few days ago, I had a phone call from Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who asked me for an update about 3I Atlas. And I mentioned this to her, and she wrote a letter to NASA on Thursday last week, just 2 days ago, in which he encourages NASA to look into the possibility of using Juno as a probe of 3I Atlas.
I really appreciate that update, and I hope you keep us updated on this as well. Professor Avi Loeb, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And if you want to hear more directly from Professor Avi Loeb, check out the Truth of the Matter podcast. Our conversation now has more than 500,000 views. He talks about how AI will change UAP research, the potential risks of contacting extraterrestrial life, and what keeps him up at night. You can find my podcast, The Truth of the Matter, on NewsNation's YouTube page, or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Comet 3I Atlas was discovered on July 1st. According to NASA, it is just the third known object to be discovered within our own solar system that originated from outside our solar system. And it has drifted for millions, possibly even billions of years before it arrived here. Joining us to talk more about this, NewsNation special correspondent and investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Ross, it is always so good to see you. And first, let's just start with this assertion by Professor Loeb. Why does he believe this could be an alien craft, and what is your take here?
Good evening, Natasha. Well, look, I think the primary reason why Professor Loeb thinks that it might be something of a technological origin rather than something natural interstellar is because of its trajectory, that it does pass unusually behind the sun at its closest point behind when it's near the sun, and more importantly the speed. He attaches a lot of significance to the speed. But I do notice, Natasha, in his blog, Professor Loeb has actually said, and I quote, by far the most likely outcome will be that this is a completely natural interstellar object, probably a comet. And boy, is Professor Loeb copying it at the moment from traditional astronomy. He's really drawing a lot of fire for his suggestion that this might be something technological, something alien, because frankly, there isn't really a lot of evidence to support that claim.
You know, he is suggesting using the sun-setting NASA spacecraft Juno to intercept this object, to use that opportunity. Can you help explain that move and if there is value to that?
Okay, well, Juno is obviously a spacecraft sent out by NASA that's currently orbiting Jupiter. There is potentially sufficient fuel on board to attempt this rendezvous, but it's a huge expense and it's a huge diversion of a spacecraft from its originally assigned task, which is to investigate Jupiter. I think personally there's a lot of merit in the broad idea of what Professor Loeb is suggesting, which is that we do need to resource the investigation of so-called techno-signatures more rigidly, that we do need to start looking more aggressively than just using SETI, which is only looking for, that's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's only looking for radio signals, radio waves. And frankly, any alien civilization probably wouldn't be using electromagnetic energy in that way. So there's a frustration among a lot of people in science, including Professor Loeb, that not enough resources is going to looking for other techno-signatures. I just don't think, from talking to many astronomers, it's a good idea to go diverting existing spacecraft from, for example, Juno in orbit around Jupiter, or suggesting that these are necessarily alien probes with hostile intent. It's inflammatory, and frankly, there's not a lot of evidence for it on current evidence and data.
Okay, so, you know, Professor Loeb saying that Congresswoman Luna called him about this potential Juno move, and now she is asking NASA about the feasibility of, rather than sending Juno careening into the surface of Jupiter and ending its life cycle, to instead be diverted and to help deal with this. Do you think that NASA is likely to do this, or what is the likely response here from everything I'm seeing you shaking your head already?
NASA is chronically under-resourced right now. It's taking a huge squeeze under the current administration. I think the chances of any deviation from existing schedules are extremely unlikely. And most scientists would say that it's highly implausible, including Professor Loeb himself. He's acknowledged his speculation at the moment is unlikely.
And let me ask very quickly, Ross, do we have the technology and the ability to intercept and deal with, in the future, anything alien in nature, especially if it is hostile, as Avi Loeb is raising his hand and saying this might be?
Officially, no. Unofficially, I suspect the US has a lot more than it's letting on about. I do think that the United States is well aware of NHI. The evidence is indeed becoming overwhelming. And frankly, I suspect that they have technology and equipment that they're keeping in the black, which they're not disclosing to the public. And that's the big issue right now. I think the better emphasis is on looking for the evidence that we have on our doorstep than suggesting quite extravagant missions that would cost an enormous amount of money and resources and time, which are further out into the universe or the galaxy.
The only thing I ever want to hear about a comet that's approximately the size of Manhattan is that it won't be coming anywhere close to Earth. And yes, I get it. The term close is relative, especially in space. But this rock in question is headed our way. It's called 3I Atlas, and it is set to get as close as 167 million miles away from Earth by December 19th. That is 6 weeks from tonight. So what's the big deal exactly? The big deal is that not everybody's convinced it's a comet. And now you've got my attention. A Harvard astrophysicist named Avi Loeb has pored over the latest images and was struck by the, quote, non-gravitational acceleration of 3I Atlas. It moved faster than gravity could explain. It also looked oddly blue, when in past observations it was red and then green. That Harvard professor was kind enough to give up a Friday night to join me here live. And boy, do I have questions, Professor. First of all, should we be prepping?
We should monitor it. Thanks for having me. That's the way science is done. We shouldn't assume we know the answer about its nature in advance. It's a blind date of interstellar proportions. And my advice on blind dates is watch the other side before you say anything.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Let's talk about 3I Atlas and how it is different from all the other rocks and comets that have, come dancing into our solar system. Why is this one standing out, other than the blue light that I mentioned before?
Oh, first of all, it's very big. It's the size of a city, 5 kilometers in diameter, 1 million times more massive than the first interstellar object that we discovered 8 years ago. This is just the third, and it's so massive. There might not be enough material in interstellar space to deliver such a big object to our neighborhood over the past decade. Another thing is that it moves in the plane of the planets around the sun, which is very surprising, a chance of 1 in 500. It shed some nickel without much iron, which is very surprising because the only place we find nickel without iron is in industrial production of nickel alloys. And most recently, as you pointed out, it actually showed some non-gravitational acceleration. There was some propulsion that moved it away from its original trajectory. And I would have expected that it would lose 10 to 20% of its mass as a result of the recoil from that mass loss. And we don't see any cometary tail around it in recent days after it passed closest to the sun on October 29th. So all of these are anomalies. There are 10 of them. I didn't list all of them. And that's what makes me ask the question, is this technological in origin? Because when you have a visitor to your backyard, you better know its nature. Otherwise, it might show up at your front door. And we can't afford to just adopt the most likely interpretation, which is that it's a natural object.
I have heard you say before that sometimes there could be a smarter kid on the cosmic block, and that we should be, paying attention, because what if it releases probes? We do that. We go outside our solar system and we release probes. There's something about the glow that I've heard you mention before as well, that it glows toward the sun instead of away from the sun. Is that the way most comets glow, away from the sun, and this one's all backwards?
Yeah, that was during July and August, and usually cometary tails are made of dust and gas, and those particles are getting pushed away from the sun by the solar radiation, the solar wind. In its case, we saw that there is a jet pointed towards the sun, exactly the opposite. It's called an anti-tail, never observed before except some optical illusions where we thought that something is headed towards the sun, but not really. It was always, for a good reason, headed away from the sun. So that's another anomaly that it shows. And with all the others, I'm recommending collecting as much data as possible in the coming weeks before we figure out what this object is, because as you said, we sent the equipment out of the solar system, and maybe there was another civilization that did that a long time ago, because after all, Elon Musk may not be the most accomplished space entrepreneur since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago.
So let me ask you this. Listen, I've been stalking you. It's a bit weird, but I am fascinated with everything you say. And something you said really stood out to me, which was that it's supposed to be getting closer to Mars by the end of the week. And I wasn't sure if it was this week or next week, because I know that we have orbiters and rovers on Mars. Do you think that if it gets closer to Mars, our orbiters and our rovers will get a better peek at it and tell us exactly what it is that's coming our way?
Yeah, in fact, it did that a week ago on October 29th. It came within 29 million kilometers from Mars, and NASA has the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter that has an excellent camera on board. HiRISE, that was a month ago. We haven't yet received the data from NASA because of the government shutdown. So I very much hope that we will see it soon when the shutdown stops. And this data could give us the highest resolution image of 3I Atlas with a pixel resolution of order 30 kilometers. This is still bigger than the size of the object, but it would inform us about the material flowing out of it, the geometry of that, and any other details. It's 3 times better in resolution than the best image we had before that from the Hubble Space Telescope.
So there's a Florida representative as well as a megastar named Kim Kardashian who are demanding, I think you are as well, that NASA open up the files and tell us what they have on this thing. What is it exactly you think NASA may have that they're not sharing?
Well, they have this best image of 3A Atlas from October 2nd to 3rd, and we would love to see it. And they said due to some bureaucratic rules, they are not able to release it. I don't think science should be sabotaged by politics, the politics of the day. And I asked Kim Kardashian if she is interested. I would love to have her on my research team of 3I Atlas. Because she does show curiosity, which is at the foundation of scientific research. We should all be humble, curious, to learn something new, rather than arrogant, showing off with our expertise the way that some professionals do.
I want to be on your research team. I just don't have 100 million followers on Instagram. Professor Loeb, good to talk to you. Come back again. Come back in anytime.
And you are most welcome to join us if you are interested. I'll be happy to update you on everything.
Oh, you're going to regret that. I'm going to call you. Thanks, Professor. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Thanks for having me.
Avi Loeb, renowned theoretical physicist, Harvard professor, head of the Galileo Project, joins us once again. Professor Loeb, always wonderful to see you. And let's start with this. I mean, you are one of the most outspoken voices pushing for these images from NASA. They're convinced it's just a comet. Are you convinced?
Thanks for having me, Natasha. Well, the verdict should not be decided by administrators at NASA. It should be decided by the data. And in fact, the best image that they offered at the press conference indicated that there is fuzz elongated. There is some glow in front of the object in the direction of motion, not in the direction of the sun, as we might expect from evaporation of pockets of ice as a result of illumination by sunlight, or the push of the gas that comes out of those pockets of ice opposite to the direction of the sun. Instead, we see it perpendicular to the direction of the sun, in the direction of motion. And the question is whether this is a beam of light or a beam of particles that are used to clear out any micrometeorites that might be impacting the object as it moves forward. So to me, it raises more questions than it answers. And then I just calculated today that, in fact, 3I Atlas gets near Jupiter on March 16th, 2026. at a distance which is exactly identical to the distance inside of which Jupiter's gravity dominates over the sun's gravity. And this coincidence is to within 1 part in 26,000. Quite amazing. It's remarkably exactly the right distance for Jupiter's gravity to dominate when 3 Atlas comes closest to it. And in fact, the non-gravitational acceleration that was reported after it came closest to the sun, there was some push that was noticed in its trajectory, some slight deviation from the original path is needed in order to bring it exactly to that location. So by now I have even more puzzles, and the fact that NASA ignores the anomalies that 3 Atlas had, meaning the very small likelihood that it lies in the plane of the planets around the sun, and its very large size, 1 million times more massive object than the first interstellar object, you know, obviously allows them to make a very confident statement that it's a comet, but I'm still very intrigued by these anomalies.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it did feel like a very confident statement from them. I want to pull this up on the other side because you pulled no punches when writing about NASA's certainty on Medium. You write, quote, imaginative scientists master the humility to learn something new from anomalies rather than display the arrogance of expertise. Those are scientific fighting words. Professor Loeb, what specific anomalies right now are standing out to you the most that you want NASA to be more open to?
Well, the most important ones are the large mass of this object. We don't expect such a massive package to be delivered once per decade into the inner solar system, given the mass reservoir of rocks in interstellar space. They didn't even get to that. Then, of course, the fact that the trajectory lies in the plane of the planets. And finally, what I realized today, that it comes exactly at the right distance from Jupiter for Jupiter's gravity to dominate. So if it wants to release some probes near Jupiter, that's where it needs to be. And just think about the fact that humanity, the human species, emerged on Earth only over the past few million years, whereas this object probably started its journey billions of years ago. So Jupiter is easy to recognize, the biggest planet in the solar system, and perhaps that's what attracted their visit. We tend to think that it's all about us.
Professor Loeb, I have to ask quickly, is there anything in particular you still want us to do scientifically when 3I Atlas is closest to us?
Yes, we see 7 jets coming from it based on the latest images from amateur astronomers. And I would like to know the speed of the jets and the composition of the jets, because that would tell us whether it's naturally produced. These jets are produced by pockets of ice illuminated by sunlight, or if the speed of the gas in them is much greater, it would imply a technological thruster associated generating each of these jets.
Every time we speak, it provides so much scope for the imagination, and I'm so glad you're asking these questions. Professor Avi Loeb, great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.